Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mixed Reviews. This is a special bonus episode. As I said at the beginning of the year, we're going to try and do more of these. And actually, this opportunity fell into my lap because of our guest this bonus episode. So I do want to get right to it and welcome Kristy Puchko, professional film critic. She's written for Vanity Fair, The Guardian, and Gadget, Pajiba, where you can find tons of her work. Kristy, you've been on the show before. Welcome back to the Mixed Reviews. You are our first returning guest ever.
Ooh, that's very exciting.
I'm excited.
Yeah, you were like, do you want to talk about South by Southwest? I was like, yes. This is the most active I've been in days. I actually they did some gather meets. Have you done the gather meets yet?
No.
Okay.
I feel like anything that has the word gather in it is still terrifying to me. So
No, that's fair. No, they're not. Gather's like an app.
I know they're not physical. I know they're not.
Yeah. It's basically like your 8-bit characters, but it recreates like the idea of a space. So instead of being in a Zoom call with like 15 people at once where everyone has to politely listen to whoever's talking loudest, you can like walk around with your little avatar and have smaller conversations. And it was actually kind of like walking around at an actual bar at a film festival. And because if you walk past people, you can hear them like a little bit.
Oh, that's really neat, actually.
Yeah, I did that the other day. That was cool.
This future, man.
I know. I'm really excited to talk movies with you, though, because I haven't seen your face in months.
I know. I'm super excited. Well, first of all, by the way, I must say, you have the best haircut. And honestly, are you doing it yourself? And if so, I am so freaking jealous because
I'm really glad you said that. I did the DIY mullet a couple of weeks ago.
It's good. It looks good on you.
Thank you. I've had days where I'm like, yeah, nailed it. And days where I'm like, oh no.
I've also noticed that this has nothing to do with South by Southwest. I'm sorry, I just haven't caught up with Kristy in a while. I've also noticed that your dressing style is still like insanely on point, and I can barely get a novelty t-shirt on every day. So I have to compliment you that like, I don't know what quarantine is doing to you, but like you're thriving.
I assure you're like on Instagram. I try to keep up, but I only post what I look like half decent. And like one of my new tricks in quarantine is that if you put eye makeup on over a mask, people think you have it together.
I've seen contestants of Drag Race do that.
Yeah, real talk. I am just Valentina in this life. No, yeah, but I've been watching a lot of TikTok, and I kid you not, I have just become so much more bisexual in my time in quarantine.
Well, that's what we thrive for here on the Mixed Reviews, keeping it queer. So that's
exactly. Yeah, like like my husband's like very sweet and supportive, and my husband, but like it's very funny because I was like, so here's the thing, I'm gonna get more tattoos, I'm gonna start cropping all of my shirts, and I'm giving myself a mullet. And he was like, all right, fine. But yeah, on good days, the mullet has body and it looks like fun. I look like a cool rocker chick. On bad days, I look like a sketchy villain in like an old episode of SVU, where it's just like flat and upsetting looking.
2003.
So, yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, you're right. I'm like, ooh, I'm like, oh, the mullet is like it is. Yeah. So today it's doing okay, which I'm glad. I've learned all these like curling. Well, I've watched a lot of videos on about how to deal with curly hair. Cause as you know, I usually keep my hair like shaved pretty close to my head. And then I just do fun pinning things with the top. And now I'm trying something completely different. And my hair has good days and days where I just want to shove it into an oven.
I love it. It suits your face shape. It's very nice.
Thank you.
But as you mentioned, yes, the reason why we're here is to talk about South by Southwest, which actually just wrapped up. For those who don't know, South by Southwest is a yearly conference that occurs in Austin. It is a music conference, it is a technology conference, but most importantly, it's a film conference and a film festival, which is what we're going to talk about because this is a film podcast. Kristy, you were actually on a jury this year. Could you just give us a brief mention about what that was like?
That was really cool. I got to be on the jury for Midnight Shorts, which is really fun. And like, I write a lot of horror, like reviews and editorials, and I love going to genre festivals when you can go to genre festivals. And in this past year, I've covered a lot of stuff and really focused on horror because like every film has been hard hit by this past year, but like I felt like with horror, so much of the buzz comes from festivals. So I made a real effort to try to review smaller horror movies and try to do whatever I could. So when I got called in to work on Midnight Shorts, it was really fun. And basically they were like, here are 13 short films, watch them. We're going to put you together with your jury members. And then you guys vote for what you think is the best of the fest. And then we were allowed to give a special jury award too. So that was really fun. I waited until a night where like my husband was occupied in the other room. He, he was doing D&D in the other room, like virtually. And I was like, all right, I got my glass of wine. I'm shutting off all the lights. I'm going to watch a bunch of scary little movies. And they weren't all horror movies, but they're all midnight movies. So some of them are just really weird. But it was really fun. And I was pleased because I thought most of them were really great. And there were only a few where I was like, no. And there were like, some are just not my speed. But we gave it to the Mugwai, not the Mogwai, but the Mugwai, which is, it's a really, really good, scary, like home invasion, ghost horror movie about postpartum depression. It's really great. It's one of those things you watch it and you're like, this could definitely be a feature, but it doesn't feel like the sizzle reel for a feature. It felt like a contained short film, which was really important to me because there were definitely some shorts in there that I was like, this is interesting and I get what you're doing, but it feels like you're trying to sell me, not like you're trying to tell me a story.
I was just going to say, like, kind of like a pitch, which I will admit, the nice things about short films is they can really, in a brief amount of time, show you what a filmmaker is capable of, but you never want to feel like you're being sold.
Absolutely. That's the trick. And it's so hard. And it's hard to explain. Like it's, I can't be like, oh, well, here's the difference. But it's like when the story is self-contained, I feel like I understood what happened, but I also feel like there's room to grow. So like with that story, I just thought this is really effectively done. It genuinely really scared me, but also had like something to say. And the performance is really good. And then we gave a special jury prize to Stuffed, which I believe is available on the South by app until April like 16th or something.
Yeah, I believe you can still watch it. So please seek it out. That's awesome.
It's terrific. I thought it was so fun. I'm going to explain to you the premise of it. It's about a taxidermist who is like killing it at her hobby of taxidermy in a remote location, but she wants a new challenge. So she thinks it would be very cool if I taxidermied a human. But very sweet story about consent. She's not going to like kill anybody without their consent. So she goes on the internet and she looks for someone to volunteer. And she finds someone who's basically like, I don't want to grow old. I'm very afraid of that. And I'm also afraid I'm going to die and leave nothing interesting behind. So then they meet, but then they sort of fall in love. And you're like, oh no. Because like they want to be together, but also they don't want to disappoint each other. And like they came together for this like almighty project. So what are they going to do? And I got really caught up. It's like 18 minutes long. I was very invested. Now imagine all of this and it's a musical.
What?
Dude, like she started singing and I was like, what is happening? And like literally her Googling on the internet and people yelling at her that she's a freak and stuff. It's like all being sung. And I was like into this. Like it was one of those things that I watched and I was like, oh, this person got inside my head and picked up weird little sundries of the things I enjoy and put them in a short. How nice of them.
Yeah, that sounds really wonderful. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to watch that many shorts. I think I saw 3 or 4 in total, and none of them were horror shorts. So I really shorted myself on that one.
Indeed. But yeah, it was a really tough competition. It was really fun. And like, what's cool is that like we had people who like, I'm a professional critic and Jason Blum was on the panel, who is like, Blumhouse. And then RB Pedrosian, who is in development at 20th Century. So like some heavy hitters, because like these guys see your stuff and that's huge for you. And like, if I see it, I am also a big deal. No, I mean, sincerely, like it was exciting to kind of get to do the Zoom call with them and talk about like what we felt mattered as far as story and performance, and to like, passionately debate about what we thought deserved attention. And there were a lot of good things. So it was a fun problem to have to figure out like, how do we pick? And yeah, that was really cool. But yeah, one of the things that I got for that was that they were like, we'll give you a free pass to the festival. And I was like, I'm already covering the festival, so I have a pass. And thankfully it was transferable. And I was like, I know who could use this. So I was very excited.
I am eternally grateful to you because I haven't written in a while. I'll be upfront about that, but I have written for people before. I used to write for websites and I worked for Filmmaker Magazine for a while. But I Haven't had a chance to flex that muscle in a long time. And I was also really kind of burnt out. I don't want to name the other film festival, but it's not South by Southwest. The last film festival I went to, which was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it just really did a number on me. And I was just like, you know what? If I don't have to do this again, I don't want to. But you know what?
Sure.
This South by Southwest, and also I should mention South by Southwest, this is its big comeback year because unfortunately due to the pandemic, they had to cancel for the first time in a very long time last
And it
year.
was like within a week.
Oh yeah,
Like,
it was awful. Um,
yeah, everyone was spiraling from that. That was really hard.
but I have to say this South by Southwest 2021 and the way it was run really revived my faith in film festivals. I found the access to the filmmakers just really, really easy, and the access to the films and the way that they ran thing with the registering, with the number of seats and everything. I don't know. I was just very impressed because I was unsure how they were going to be able to pull it off. And I think they did it, with flying colors.
Yeah, I think that they had a real challenge in front of them. I was going to say the number, but I didn't count. I covered a lot of the virtual festivals within the past year now. And it's been interesting to see how differently each festival handles stuff. But I did really like that, like, there was an app and you could just put stuff on your TV, and like that made it really easy. Because I know some festivals that relied on like a specific server or something. And I was like,
Right.
I don't like the server. I'm just going to ask PR people for links. Like, some of them got real weird, but it's cool that they were able to do that and that they were able to open it up in a way that, like, in theory, more people could participate. I know that there was some controversy because they only did passes instead of doing individual tickets. Like Sundance also did individual tickets. But I don't know anything about the numbers on those. I'm not totally sure we'll ever hear the numbers on those. I feel like those will probably.
I think they'll keep those close to the chest.
Right, but it's also because, like, how do you know what success is on this? Like, we're in there's no map for where we're at right now. So, but yeah, it was very cool, and I was glad to see, because I remember when the thing was first announced, and it's a very different South by lineup than what you typically get. Because typically, there's usually like 5 to 10 like big movies that have big stars, and that they're going to play at the Paramount, which is this big theater in Austin, and they're going to sell out, and tickets are going to be hard to get, and that there's going to be a big red carpet, and there's going to be big parties, and like it's going to be a thing. Like, by contrast, in past years, like the surprise screening one time was like Ready Player One.
Right.
That is not my best example because I loathed that movie.
No, but it was a big film.
Yes,
I think even,
but like literally Steven Spielberg is there,
Right.
like he's on stage, and like, they've had big parties or big things before. Like they have Seth Rogen usually premieres a movie there, and it's usually a big comedy. 2 years ago at South by, they premiered The Long Shot with him and Charlize Theron, and they had Boys to Men play after the movie. Like, it's like South by people are like, oh, it's such a party festival, which is true, but it's because the idea that they have like big things that are like big crowd pleasers, and then they have all these like weirder little movies that are like thoughtful or strange or dark, and it's cool because the big stuff allows them to get people to come and like guarantee like both press and audiences, and then you kind of wind your way into these weirder corners. And like one of my favorite things I've seen at South by was The Breaker Uppers, which came out, that was 2019 too. That's on Netflix right now. Highly recommend. But it's a New Zealand comedy about these two friends who have made it their jobs to break people up. Like, if you want to get out of a relationship, you go to them, you pay them monies, they will like fake your death, they will pretend to be your pregnant mistress. Like, this is the kind of thing that it's very funny and super weird. And it's like the people who do like Flight of the Conchords, it's like adjacent to them. Like the kid from Boy is in it as like a himbo, and he is one of the funniest himbos I've ever seen. And it's just very funny. But like they get like weirder little comedies like that. And so what was cool about this year was we didn't have the big stuff. Like, you weren't getting like, surprise, the next Fast and the Furious movie, which was a thing that happened one year. But
I
what
was
you
really
did
upset
get were like,
Boys to Men didn't come to my home. That was the big problem.
No joke, they threw me a rose and I still have it. So
I know you wouldn't joke about that.
No, that was, what it was? It was like literally the week that Luke Perry died, and like my heart was still broken. And then I got to see Boys to Men play, which is the thing I never thought would happen because they didn't come to my dinky town. Like, that was very healing. But yeah, so that's the thing with South by. Like South by is a place where you can have these super weird experiences where you're like, I just saw Boys to Men play. And like this year was like, I think they were trying to recapture that in a variety of ways. I mostly focused on the movies because frankly, I don't have the bandwidth for much else.
Yeah, same.
But I did like that there's a continuing thread this year of like really good comedies at South by. Did you see any that you liked?
Oh, so there was, by the way, and I just want to say, I watched more films in this film festival than I have in a long time. And part of that is the convenience of not having to leave my home. So I was able to basically just be like, what's the next thing I want to watch? But I saw 15 films altogether, which is a lot for me. And
that's good. I don't remember how many I saw.
Oh, I just happen to have the number in front of me. That's literally
that's good. That's smart. I stopped counting after the ones I was assigned because after that I was like, anything else you do is great.
I don't blame you. But I would say, since we're on the topic of comedies, one of my favorite films of the festival was a movie called Ninjababy.
I love Ninjababy.
I knew
I watched
you did.
Ninjababy because you tweeted it. That was actually, this was where me giving you a pass turned out to be very helpful for me because you would tweet about what you were watching and then I would text you on the side and be like, should I also watch that? And like, you were very helpful.
And I was like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ninjababy is a Norwegian dramedy. It's about a young woman who finds herself pregnant after a one-night stand. And then goes in to get an abortion and finds out it's actually from a previous one-night stand. She's been pregnant for a lot longer than she thought she was. And the sort of wrench that this child now throws into her life because she's going to have this child. And will she give this child away? Will she give this child to the idiot man that she slept with? Will she keep this child? It's very funny. She's an artist, and she assigns a whole character to this baby, a comic character that she's calling Ninjababy. And
because he's a rotten, sneaky ninja baby.
Exactly. And
the idea that she did it because he the baby snuck up on her. She didn't know that it was in her. Made me laugh so hard that's why it's called Ninjababy.
This film is just so sweet and so funny. It has a lot of heart. It's also got a lot of really amazing use of mixed media in it. There's a lot of the times the drawings interact with her life, and not just in over the top, blatant ways, like really subtle. I was really impressed by the way that this was executed throughout the film. The film is directed by please. Everybody knows I cannot pronounce anything worth shit, so I'm so sorry. This very Norwegian name, but Yngvild say Feek. If I'm wrong, please write us in, Yngvild. The screenplay is by Johan Fasting, and yeah, I cannot say enough good things. It's actually based on a graphic novel as well, so. Yeah, it's just funny, and another example of a comic book movie.
You know what's so funny though is that what I enjoyed about it is when the Ninjababy drawing shows up to illustrate her kind of being able to talk her thoughts out with this child in a very pre-venge mode minus the murder.
It's a good reference.
The baby is not cute the way she draws it,
right?
And I really like that because at first I was like, that baby is so gross looking. I was like, of course it is, because she sees it as this invader, right? And she's so annoyed at it. And I thought the way they styled all those things was so thoughtful. And I texted you during one scene that I'm not going to give away, but I was like, they are not about to do what I think they're going to do. And then I just texted Gavin, it was 3 words, I think, that just being like, oh my God, I can't believe this. But I appreciated it. It reminded me of Obvious Child or
yes.
Wetlands, where it's talking about these elements of womanhood that are uncomfortable and gross and that girls aren't supposed to talk about. And right. I really enjoyed that the film does that, and that the film also she resolutely doesn't want this kid, and no matter what anybody says, they cannot convince her that she wants this kid. And as someone who is child free and perfectly happy about that, I respected that, because I felt I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop where she was going to be like, oh, but maybe really. And because I've had people say to me so many times, like, oh, but it's different when they're yours. And I'm like, that is a real big risk to take.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, like, what if I'm a married lady? What if I chose to have a baby and then I was like, no, don't like this? Like, in theory, I could give that kid up for adoption, but I'm fairly certain that I will get shit from my family for the rest of my existence. Like, it's not, you can't just get, like, it's very frustrating how, like, motherhood is treated like a thing all women are expected to do, no matter how prepared they are,
Right.
whatever. Like, and I really enjoyed how Ninjababy engages with that conversation, and also the way it created really fun characters. It reminded me of another Scandinavian, it was a comedy mini series called, I think it was called like Home for Christmas, or it's on Netflix, and it's about a girl who lies to her family and says she has a boyfriend, and they're like, great, bring him to Christmas dinner, and now she has 24 days to find a boyfriend to bring Christmas dinner, which is like such an American conceit, except that, like, she doesn't just want to pay an escort to sit in dinner. So she's trying to find an actual boyfriend. And it's about 24 days of her just saying yes to everything so she can figure it out. And it had that kind of sense of, like, embracing this sense of chaos and optimism, but in a really smart, like, in a very sophisticated sense of humor. So I really dug Ninjababy. Like, I had bookmarked it early on in the festival, something I was curious about because the log line was funny. And then when I learned it was Norwegian, I got, like, more excited about it, because Norwegian humor is just, man, it just doesn't, it's not, American humor always, like, wants to be a little bit nice.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, we'll
it
always
doesn't pull its
backpedal.
punches at all.
Yeah. Like, Norwegian humor is, like, very kind of like, ta-da! No, I know that was snarky.
It's funny too, and we'll move on from Ninjababy in just a moment, but I do want to say the other thing that I really like too is I think in a more traditional sense, a lot of the things that the women are saying in that movie, I think people associate more with men. And that's not me being sexist, that's the Hollywood standard. And so it's nice to also see a movie in which the women are people and not just ideals.
Yeah. Like, the women in this movie are messy, and I thought that made them really fun. I just like, from the moment where the two best friends are, she's like, your boobs are bigger, and she's like, are they? She's like, yeah, they totally are. And her friend just pokes them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I enjoyed that. It was, like, very unguarded. They were just like, you know, it's the kind of thing that America, we're like, oh my God. And
that she was shown having, like, a positive sex life. It literally wasn't like, though her friend does have the great line, but it wasn't like she was like, oh, I don't know who the father is. She knew the men she had slept with, though. I do love that her friend was like, oh, this is a Mamma Mia situation.
Oh my God, it's like, a Mamma Mia situation. And then when she explains why it's not, I was like, it's very frank about sex. It's very frank about the fact that this is a young woman in her 20s who's trying some stuff. Right. Whatever. But I love there's, like, a scene where she tries to imagine, like, talking to potential adoptive parents while she's, like, having a cigarette and explaining all the wild stuff she did because she didn't know she was pregnant.
Yeah.
Like, I really enjoyed.
What makes that scene even better is how awful the prospective parents are. Like, my favorite is the one that was like, well, we want to know the skin color of the baby. And she's like, that's racist. And they're like, no, there's just a lot of racism in the world. And she's like, and you're going to fix that by adopting a white child?
It's because it's so funny because, like, she's angry, and so she's trying to kind of, like, it's the way, it's very messy, and I appreciate messy narratives about women. Yeah. When the narrative is, like, smartly messy, because I also watched some stuff that I was like, I get what you're doing, but I don't know what we're not doing it well. But, like, that actually reminds me, there was another one. Did you see Recovery?
No, I unfortunately didn't. That was one of the few that I did not get in time. Even though I complimented the seating system, I unfortunately did not register in time.
Well, Recovery is, I'll speak about it briefly, but Recovery is one of the COVID movies. Vulture listed all of them. There were way more than I was aware of.
There is a lot of COVID movies.
Some of them, though, were like introducing Selma Blair, where most of it was shot before COVID. Yeah. And then they have, like, kind of an epilogue about COVID, and they counted that. But this one is, like, a COVID movie. Like, it takes place during the pandemic. It was shot during the pandemic. It's about the pandemic. It's specifically about two sisters, and it's very funny. The first scene is literally two sisters who are like, oh my God, dirty 30, this is gonna be my year.
What are you most excited for? It's your 30th year.
We're going to Rome.
And Coachella.
Tom Hanks is healthy.
That's always a plus.
I'm buying stock. I'm thinking airlines and hotels.
51,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the United States.
And then it's like, literally, they're just like hard cut to a month later, and everyone's just like, ah. And the premise is they find out their grandmother who raised them is in a old folks home that has a COVID outbreak. And they're very concerned for her. And they call the old folks home and they're basically like, yeah, you should probably come and get her. That would probably be safer. And they're like, we live in Albuquerque. You're in Washington. They're like, oh, that's rough. So they like have to drive to see their grandma or to get her and recover her. But along the way, they like don't want to eat anywhere. They don't want to interact with people. They don't want to be around anti-maskers. There's like and then of course they have like a sister who doesn't take any of this seriously, and they call her and they're like telling her what's going on, and she's like, I'm on a cruise. The prices are great, and they're like, oh my God. Yeah, like there's so many scenes like that where you're like, no. And then they just like, but along the way they meet like weird people, and it's like a really funny road trip movie. It reminded me of Unpregnant. Did you see that last year?
Fucking loved Unpregnant.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's that kind of vibe where it's like these sisters on this trip, and like the two girls who I wish I had their names handy, but they're great. They're very funny. They have such a good comedic timing, and like they play off each other super well. It was like a very Kristen Wiig and Annie Willow vibe where you just like get that they get each other and they like were able to play and say silly stuff. And I had so much fun watching it. I almost didn't because I was like, I don't know, another COVID comedy. Because I'll tell you this for free. The one movie at the festival that I hated was The End of Us, which was how was it the End of Us?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. I will say, you are not the only person who I've spoken to, and I the other person will remain nameless, but that told me to stay away from that movie, and therefore I did. And normally, if I got that many like don't watch it, I'd be like, well, now my interest is piqued.
Now I want to know.
Exactly, because I'm a brat. But
no, I get that, because you want to know what people are like upset about. But like where this movie found the things about COVID and was able to explore them in a way that made them funny and interesting to talk about. And like The End of Us just felt like a checklist. They made a little video on why they made the movie, and they were like, our friend broke up with his girlfriend and we decided to make a movie about it. And their friend is the one who stars and plays the guy in the movie. And like, that tracks. Like, because I watching it with my husband, and he was like, did that guy write and direct this movie? And I looked it up and I was like, no. And then I watched that video. I was like, okay, same vibes. Because like, it's about this couple that breaks up like literally right before the LA lockdown. And now this unemployed actor who has a screenplay about Einstein that he hasn't actually started yet, but he's thinking about it for like 4 years. He's stuck with his girlfriend who like has a real job. And I don't mean like being an actor's not a real job, but being an actor, like he's being an actor is bullshit, where he doesn't actually go to auditions. He just is in his head a lot about it. And like, he systematically just drives her nuts, and he doesn't take stuff seriously. He like randomly invites a friend over one day, and she's like, what are you doing? And then it's basically about like what hell it is being together. And they're like, hey, remember doom scrolling? Hey, remember this? Hey, remember? And it's like, just like, yeah, man. Yeah, I do.
We're still doing it.
Ago.
Yeah.
Also still, yeah. Like I was just, I hated. Well, I was like assigned to review it for RogerEbert.com. So my review, I literally called it a trash fire. I ended my review calling it a trash fire. By contrast, Recovery is quite fun. I haven't written about it yet, but I will for Pajiba, I think, because it was really zippy. And the fact that I was able to be like, this is a pretty zippy pandemic comedy was impressive.
I do want to give a shout out to one more COVID dramedy, I want to say, and that's I'm Fine, Thanks for Asking, which is a film I saw. That one. Yeah, it's actually the last movie I watched for the festival, and I just really fell in love with it. It's directed by Kelly Cowley and Angelique Molina. Both of them appear in the movie too, so it's sort of a reverse of what you were just talking about with The End of Us.
Yeah, there's a way to do it that works.
Oh, absolutely. You could tell these women have their own voice. They have an interesting, lens in which they view things. Also, this movie was so colorful and bright and really oversaturated in the way that, Dan was in the room when I was watching it, and he was like, "Oh, it looks like Tangerine," and I was like, yeah. "Oh, yeah," that's a compliment. Trust me, that we do.
No, totally.
It's this movie about this woman. She's recently become widowed. Her and her child are houseless now, and she's convinced her 8-year-old daughter that they're quote unquote camping, and her 8-year-old daughter is like, I don't want to camp anymore.
I'm over this.
Yeah, exactly. It's set in California, and she's essentially out doing odd jobs, cutting people's hair, doing like a fake Postmates thing, to try and get money to get an apartment. And it's the last day before she can get enough money for
Yeah,
this
like she'll
apartment.
lose the hold if she doesn't make enough money.
Absolutely.
So
and
it's like,
it is just
yeah.
one day. And the opening credits are very do the right thing as she's skating around California and she's dancing to the music. And it was just such a joyful, it's a subject that could easily be so dour and so wrought. And they brought so much joy and reality to it. And Kelly Callie's character is not a perfect person by any means. And I think it's easy for an audience to idolize a person who's struggling and trying to do the right thing. And she's, not necessarily always doing the right thing. But I really dug this movie. And it's one of those movies that I was like, damn, I want more people to see it. And I want to see what they do next.
Yeah, totally. And also what I liked about it, and I wrote about this in my Ebert review, is that we're like, the end of us, the only gimmick is it's COVID. Like, I'm fine, thanks for asking. Her situation is happening during COVID, but doesn't feel remotely specific to COVID. Like, homelessness is a very serious issue that's everywhere. And it's like, it's left ambiguous why they lost their house or their residence or whatever.
Right.
You know that her husband died, so it might have something to do with that. And like the thing is, people keep coming up to her and asking if she's okay, and they're not talking about COVID, which I thought was really smart, because we can all engage with that. But they're like, "Oh my God, are you okay? It must be so hard since he died." And because it has this different focal point, we can, even though it's set during COVID, we can escape and watch that movie instead of being like. But it's like the same thing now, where like, people say to each other, like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I hate that question. Yeah. I mean, like, all things considered, I guess fine.
I guess I'm okay.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thanks for asking is such a great title. And she does say that in the movie. And it's like the way she plays it is just it's pitch perfect. It's this concept of like, what are you supposed to say? Because you don't want to spill your purse in front of everybody, not just because then like you're just sharing the burden, but also because then like you have to go through it again. And it's like, I just need to get through this day. I cannot share with everyone I run into all the stuff that's in my head right now. Like I can't, because then I can't keep going. Then I can't keep skating. And like, I really loved the energy and the life to that. And also how you've got a real feel for where she is, like location wise. I thought they shot the area in a way that made it seem so lively and so fun. And you got a real sense of the characters.
Especially and, like, because she has to come back to places at points too. So there's like a real circular motion to the same places that she's visiting over and over again too, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, and there's also like a low-key criticism of how women are treated in times of, in just period.
Just
there's
in
like
general.
every guy in this movie who thinks he's a good guy helping out, like is just on some level of being a creep. Yeah. But they do it in a way that's like, it's not a devastating movie because like, it's kind of like chin up, like, right. Yeah, no, this sucks, but like I'm not going to let this take me down. Like that's kind of the whole conceit.
Right. There's a lot of movies that go for the route of it can always get worse. This definitely went for the route of it can always get better. I did want to mention, by the way, with your talking about how like shitty the men are in the movie, one of the best scenes in the film is a cameo by Dion Cole, who basically shows up, does a monologue, and then leaves the film. And it's so good and leaves such an impression.
Hey, beautiful. How you doing? You all right? You a preacher? This your church? I ain't never seen a reverend in skates.
Incoming call from Sugar Lips. Incoming call from Sugar
my car's
Lips.
Going off because that's...
Incoming call from Sugar Lips. Call declined.
It's messed up. I apologize. It kept beeping.
He's a producer on it, which made sense to me.
That makes
sense.
But
it's also like he's probably the most famous person in the movie.
100%.
So like it's which is smart because then it's like people might be like, oh, I love him on Blackish, so I'll watch this movie. It's like really smart. It's a very smart placement, and he's very good in the part. Like he clearly was like, yeah, I'll do that. Like it's a very smart movie. I was comedies, I feel like South by usually has a pretty decent slate of comedies, and I felt this year they were really strong. I know you and I both. Do you want to talk about the one I know you and I both liked?
And it's funny. I was going to interrupt by saying too. What's great about I'm Fine, Thanks for Asking is it's technically also a road movie, which was the subject of our last Mixed Reviews episode. And speaking of road movies, I think the best film I saw in the entire festival would be Todd Stevens' Swan Song.
I watched
Kristy,
it twice.
You watched it twice? That's amazing. Would you like to tell everybody what Swan Song is about? Because it is so good, and I don't think I could do it justice.
So Udo Kier stars as this man named Pat, who we meet in this completely depressing old folks home where like he's told how to sit. His hobby is like folding napkins. It's very bleak. And then he gets this kind of like, it's very like very like crime movie where it's like one last job, where a lawyer shows up and tells him that this woman that he used to be friends with and who used to be his client has died, but she wants him to do her hair. And what I love was rewatching it. He doesn't say anything until they show him the photo of like, they're like, this is a photo from a couple of years ago. Maybe you could do it like this. And he goes, split ends and all.
Yeah.
And like, you get it. You understand who this man is. And initially he rejects her. And the reason I bring up the small plot point is because what he says is, bury her with bad hair. And I was
the best line. Yeah.
It's so good. But then he decides that he changes his mind. But instead of like, he's a man that has like no money, no resources, and has like been isolated from his community for a while. So the story of like what happened between them slowly unfolds as he walks into town, this teeny town of Sandusky. And like along the way, he keeps meeting people. And it's like the setup, I kept expecting people to be horrible to him because he is like a very clearly like old school queen, even though he's wearing a dirty old tracksuit that has seen much better days. But like I kept waiting for people to be rude to him, but people are just like either bemused or like caring toward him. Like the first interaction he has is like trying to buy cigarettes.
Yeah.
And the guy behind the counter is like, oh, I didn't know anyone buys these anymore. Does your wife smoke these? He very slowly and methodically takes a cigarette out of the pack with these long, skinny things, lights it, takes a deep inhale and exhales and goes, she adores them. And like the old guy, like the guy behind the counter doesn't give him a hard time about it. It's just like, they're kind of like, okay. And what's interesting is it's not just funny because of, I expect some sort of redneck small town reaction and I don't get that. It's also funny because he seems to expect that too. Right. And the film is kind of showing how the world has changed since he kind of became reclusive. And in that, he's also seeing what he lost and also kind of what his legacy is as one of the pioneering gay men in this town.
This used to be white. My beauty supply store. I had an account.
Oh, you going way back in the day. What you looking for?
Perfect powder bleach and Vivante.
You won't get that here. And baby, that smack don't stick to nappy heads. Now, if you want some Kizzy's Daughter pomade or some Miss Zora's buttercream, hell, even some juicy ass Jerry curl, I got you. Mm-hmm. Try Dee Dee Dale's downtown.
I rather swallow mucus.
Why don't you tell us how you really feel?
I watched it twice because here's the thing. So I didn't get like an advanced screener of this one. I watched it because I saw other people talking about it. And I liked it so much that on Saturday, when I was like, I have a limited amount of hours and I can only watch so many things, I wanted to watch it again. And I was like, I gave myself the logic of like, well, I'm going to make some, I was making soup. So I was like watching it while making soup because I'd already seen it once, but just listening to the lines again and like catching stuff I missed the first time, it made me so happy. It's such a thoughtfully made film because it's talking about this idea, not just an elegiac idea of like legacy, but more specifically about how like, there were gay men and like, you know, queer people who fought really hard for any sense of normalcy in their lives. And now you have queer youth who get all these freedoms, but also don't necessarily know what these people had to give for us to have these things. And it recognizes that in a movie that doesn't feel preachy.
Right.
It's like, it's a movie that's like bittersweet in kind of the best way because he's a little angry that these people have it so much easier than he did, but mostly just because they don't know who Mr. Pat is. They don't understand what he gave. And so it's like unfair to him that he suffered so much and like, they don't even know.
And I do want to, that's such a really astute point. And I do want to touch on that. the one thing I will say before I get into that, though, is one of the things I absolutely loved about it was it really felt like a throwback to the queer cinema of the 90s. So outside of the 4 or 5 main people that are in it, it felt like it was populated by non-professional actors, which was like a total staple. And it also felt like it sort of existed in this sort of nebulous, I don't want to say magical world because it's very much our world, but this sort of nebulous world where nobody knew who Mr. Pat was, but everybody sort of knew who Mr. Pat was. And I love that feeling of that it's both like a warm hug, but also like a standoffish sort of thing. But I think everything you just said is absolutely brilliant and lovely because that's really what it's talking about. The other quality the movie has too is sort of in its undertones because it ends up having to talk about things like the AIDS crisis, but in the fact that this woman, Rita Parker Sloan is her name, she's played by Linda Evans, which is a huge deal for me because Dynasty was huge in my mom's house. And I have to say, Linda Evans looks exactly the same as she did when she was on Dynasty. And I don't know how because she's in her 80s. Well, I mean, I know how, but I'm being nice. And, but there's a scene where he really comes to terms with this idea that, during the Reagan era, a lot of Republicans who didn't care about people's sexuality or what they did, it really turned towards the more conservative. And because he was in this small town of Sandusky, Ohio, it was very easy for this rich woman to shun him when his lover died of AIDS than it was, if he was in the city, if he was in New York City, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But the politics changed so much and it changed people and it made people into monsters. And that's really what this woman became to him. She was able to destroy his life and everybody was able to pull away from him because it didn't he wasn't a human anymore. And so they didn't have to deal with him. And there is this sort of sad underpinning and the movie does let you be aware of it, but it never, like you said, it never gets preachy. It's never like, how dare you turn away from your gay elders? How dare you forget the fight that they fought for you so you can marry and you can have kids? But I don't know. It's just really brilliant and so lovely. I did want to mention he has a rival hairdresser that used to be his assistant, played by Jennifer Coolidge. They have an amazing scene together. Michael Urie's...
It's like her in a very different role than we usually see her in.
Absolutely. And you get... It's that thing I was talking about where it's very clear she regrets her role in... But
also, I don't think it paints everybody that betrayed him as like outright wrong,
right?
Because it does try to, it basically, I mean, it's essentially a therapy session where he has to accept that this is what happened and I don't like why it happened, this is why they did what they did, and it doesn't like turn on him, but it's like there's this, I'm gonna reference RuPaul's Drag Race. I find this very helpful. There was the season where it was Eureka and the Vixen. Yeah. One of the queens was giving Vixen advice, and she was like, "Look, I get why you're mad at Eureka. It totally makes sense that you're mad at Eureka. That's understandable. But how is you being angry at Eureka helping you right now?"
Right.
And that's essentially the message that this movie has. Is like, look, no, you're right to be angry about all the ways you were betrayed and all the ways you were treated. What does hanging on to that do for you now? And so like Mr. Pat is given the chance to confront these people on whatever terms he's capable of doing that and to choose to let go. And I thought that was really beautiful. And also just like, I think for me, the scene in the gay club where he's dancing and like, he said, "I really miss this." And someone says dancing and he said, "No, our people." And I just, I mean, especially because like last year, we lost Pride. We didn't get to do Pride. Like this made me swell up and it made me feel like, and also I feel like it must be frustrating as an older gay person to look back and say, because even as a millennial queer person, it can be uncomfortable to see how some of these kids are so comfortable with themselves.
Right.
Because you just feel it's not their fault. They're not doing it to you, but you can feel judged.
Right.
Or you can feel forgotten, or you can feel like what you went through doesn't matter because they're doing so well. And like, that is not a rational thought. It is an emotion that comes from a place of trauma. And like, I'm sure that's even harder for an older generation that had to flat out lie for a lot longer than a lot of us did. And like, it's also exciting
that
to see
survived a plague. You know?
And that survived not just a plague, but then people ignoring it.
Yeah.
Like everyone around you is dying and people just want you to carry on and like do their hair and not talk about it. Like he has so many lines that are so quietly devastating in this. And like, I was just really caught up in, because people that were talking about it on Twitter, which it's Twitter, like we can only get surface level on Twitter and that's the thing and that's fine. But on Twitter, people kept being like, oh, he's so funny. He's so cute. He's so whatever. And he's all those things. But there's also this like acidic wit because there's a real agony going on at play underneath what happened. And I thought that this film captured it so beautifully that like I wanted to watch it again and again, but also like I wept watching it.
Well, it's very cathartic. And I will say before we move off it, the other thing that, we don't know how much longer we're going to have Udo Kier, and Udo Kier is, a staple of being this sort of character actor who's willing to do anything. He was a Warhol person, and I just think that this is the role that hopefully he will be remembered for, and it's giving him, it's not just this character, Mr. Pat's Swan Song. It's Udo Kier's Swan Song, and I think that's really beautiful. I did want to, real quick, while we were still talking about queer issues, I did want to bring up Wes Hurley's Potato Dreams of America. I don't know if you got a chance to see it. It's based off a true story, Wes Hurley's own story. The first half of the movie is very, it feels like a Fassbinder movie. It feels like a John Waters movie. It's very artificial, and it's about him growing up in a Soviet country, and then he comes to America, and it starts becoming very real. He's also, a young gay kid, and he's trying to come to terms with that. I really enjoyed it. It's one of those films that I hope other people see, and Wes Hurley's a young filmmaker, so he's going to get to make more. And I think his personal brand is so cool. And by the way, Leah Delaria plays his grandmother in the Soviet portion, and just fucking love Leah Delaria, like cast her and everything. But and I did want to mention, by the way, back on Swan Song was picked up by Magnolia, so you will get a chance to see Swan Song.
Wow.
Yeah.
It might actually get an FYC campaign then.
Yeah, and that makes me very happy. But was there anything else that you saw that, be it a comedy, be it a documentary, be it anything?
I watched a bunch of the Midnighters, which is very much my jam. I really liked Sound of Violence, which is getting kind of mixed reviews.
I did get a chance. I RSVP'd for it, and then I ran out of time. So,
well, I'm sure I don't know if it's got distribution, but I feel confident it will. It got some pretty good reviews. But yeah, that one was really interesting. It was about a girl who has synesthesia, which is when you hear music, you see like colors, or she does, but she specifically sees them whenever she hears sounds of violence. So like she's drawn to that. And it's actually, I thought, a very good allegory for like addiction, about how like you're chasing this high and you don't really care what you need to get there. And I thought that was actually very beautifully done. I really like The Feast, which is a Welsh movie that's like very folk horror. And I'll have to write about that one because I really enjoyed that. It's like very moody and weird. And you're spending a lot of it going like, what are we doing? What's happening? And then you're like, oh, gotcha. And I like that about it. Because I was like, you're like noticing things and being like, what does that mean though? And maybe if you're Welsh, it comes sooner. I don't know. And then I actually really liked, there is a 3 hour and 15-minute documentary called
about
Woodlands
folk horror.
Dark. Yeah. It has a very long title. So look that one up because I don't remember it off the top of my head. I had to keep checking it. But it is long. My hope for it is that it gets picked up by like AMC or Shudder and they turn it into like 6 episodes, because it has 6 chapters. And the director, she put in so much information that it's awesome. Like, I really enjoyed watching it. I learned so much about folk horror because I was like, I know things. I don't know. And then I was like, oh no, there's a lot here. And like, it really digs back to like, not just like the early 60s when British folk horror became a thing, but back to like true crime and
Oh, wow.
literature and things that like inform that idea. And then it branches out and talks about how like in America, folk horror like became The Shining and Deliverance and The Craft. And it's really interesting the way it ties all these things together. And then it goes, okay, now let's look at the broader world. And then it starts talking about how like in Japan, folk horror became this, and in Australia, it does this. And it was really great. My only complaint about it, and I wrote my review on RogerEbert.com, and I said this was like, literally, it's so much information that by the final chapter, I was just punch drunk, and I was like, I can't take in anymore.
Yeah.
But like, I really enjoyed it. So my hope for it is that it gets put on TV and you can like kind of digest it as you go. Because like at the end of every like chapter, I was like, well, I have a list of movies I would like to watch before I continue. And I don't have the time.
Yeah.
So that is my hope for it. But yeah, those were all really, really terrific fun. I quite liked all of those. And introducing Selma Blair, if you're a 90s kid, is essential viewing. It's also just a very good documentary.
Introducing Selma Blair, I definitely wanted to mention it. It's going to be out on Discovery Plus. I'm not sure when, but soonish.
They were like within the year.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a documentary about Selma Blair's struggle with MS and actually a very, very specific period of time in which she's attempting to get stem cells in order to hopefully cure it, but there is no cure
or like
for
reboot
MS.
her system. And
yeah.
It's intense. It's also really interesting because you learn a lot about who she is and why she is, and it becomes like a real mental health journey as well.
Yes.
And I thought that was actually very impressive because she doesn't hold back.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't pull any punches. She allows it to get completely personal and internal. And I have to say, Dan walked in on me watching it, and he was like, "Are you already crying?" And I was like, "It's 10 minutes in, and I've been crying the whole time." So,
yeah,
but she is such a staple for us,
Right. And I think if you're someone who struggles with self-doubt, like, I think whenever we see famous people talk about mental illness, there's a certain level of like, you don't have real problems. Like, right. You're rich and famous and people love you. But like, I mean, like Chris Evans has anxiety, and people have whatever. I'm like, it's Anthony Bourdain had suicidal trauma, and like, it's this thing of like, you watch her and you're like, but you're so beautiful and you're so funny. Like, how can you doubt yourself? And like, what you need to take away from that is not that she's lying, but that your brain lies to you.
Yeah.
And like, that's a really hard, there's a couple of movies at South by that are about that. And I feel like it's really hard to teach yourself that there's part of you that is not helpful to you. And again, like the anger thing, like, but watching her talk about like how her mother talked to her and how she would basically be like, oh, my mom saw this photo shoot and she said this really mean thing. And then she looks at the different photo shoot and she says something mean about herself. And you're like, Selma, like,
it's generational. Yeah.
Right. Like you're taking that on because your mother put that like, and so it's very interesting to see that because she's not, I said in my review for the playlist, like, I feel like cynically you could say that because she's not an actress anymore, this is how she's getting attention. This is how she's feeding that drive. I feel like a cynical person could make that assessment. I think it is more that she has hit the point where she is tired of lying or allowing a narrative of her to exist that is not who she is.
Yeah.
So like, if you only see her when she's on the red carpet or in a beauty magazine or from that like scandal that happened on the plane or whatever, like she wants you to know the context of that. And I thought that that's incredibly brave because this is not like a glossy documentary that's like acting like she's the best thing ever. Like it shows her having some real struggles and it shows her saying some stuff that I was like, oh, okay. But like, that's the thing. She's not trying to project some idea of perfection remotely. And she even says, she's like, I don't want to be a role model for disabled people. Like I'm just a disabled person. And like, I feel like the way I don't want to be a role model for people with disabilities. Pardon me. I use the wrong nomenclature there. And that matters. But that's her thing, is that she's trying to talk about her struggles without allowing that to be the story.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really smart. There's a lot going on. She's also a mother. She's also someone who is dealing with the way fame can intrude on her life and the way the stress levels intrude on her life. And I thought that the film was really thoughtful in how it portrays her. And I also like that it effectively creates a kind of Norma Desmond arc with her, where she starts off. Yeah, and she's literally like talking about Norma Desmond, and in the end they kind of tie it up, but in a nice way. Like, well, what if Norma Desmond had a happy ending? So thankfully Selma Blair doesn't have a crappy screenwriter in her life.
I did, the only other documentaries I unfortunately got a chance to watch were Alien on Stage.
That was great.
Yeah, I was going to say, so much fun, by Lucy Harvey and Danielle Coomer. And honestly, when this hits, people are going to go gaga over it. It is so much fun. It's about a stage production in England, a version of Alien, of the movie Alien. And it's just a riotous good time. I saw some buzzy, it's like Waiting for Guffman in real life. It's not, but it is fun. It's a lot of fun.
Every alternative I've come up with, I hope, has done what Ridley Scott would have wanted to do, but in a more basic format.
I think they did Robin Hood production the year before.
You brought me up on Alien, didn't you?
Yes, don't say what age. Don't tell them what age. I'll let you watch it.
Robin Hood has quite a sort of Christmassy panto feel, and Alien just doesn't.
I also got to see Hulu's documentary about WeWork, which will be out on Hulu, so you'll get a chance to see it. But I have to say, it's very worth watching to just realize that a lot of our current businessmen, the reason why we let them get away with things they do is because they create a cult around them, which may or may not sound like a former president of ours. So I do recommend checking that out just to see how easily people are manipulated by people they think are powerful.
Yeah, it hits Hulu April 2nd. I'll check that out.
Oh, absolutely. I actually have a friend who worked on it, so full disclosure.
I do want to mention Violation. It played in Festival Favorites.
Oh, okay.
Because it premiered at TIFF and then played Sundance. But Violation is a horror movie that didn't play in the Midnighters, this Festival Favorites. But it's a movie about this woman who had something traumatic happen and is trying to cope with it in a way that is controversial. Let's go with that. But I think it's actually really well done. It's about gaslighting and belief and trying to come back from that. And it's also hitting Shudder this week.
Oh, nice.
So
yeah,
awesome. I think it's this Thursday, so March 25th. I don't know when this episode will come out, but it should be on Shudder very soon. So if you check Violation it's really smartly done. It's not something that's reveling in the title sounds alarming, but it's not something that's reveling in the violence. It is violent, but it's more talking about what does that mean? And so I think it's very smartly done.
What is it that you're doing right now?
You told me last night that you do selfish things, and I should have realized that when you kissed me, I should have stopped things, but...
I did stop things.
You were emotionally vulnerable.
I told you that in confidence.
Touching...
In confidence. I opened up to you about things I was really ashamed of because I wanted your help.
I don't mean you're a bad person. I'm not going to tell her anything.
I did want to give a shout out to Women as Losers, which is a cute little feminist film set in 60s San Francisco. It was directed by Lisette Feliciano. This is one of her first films. Highly recommend that. It's a very small movie, but I thought it was clever and it really had its own voice. And that to me is more impressive than anything.
Yeah. Some people criticized it for being too cutesy, or they said that they was talking down to its audience, and because there's moments where the fourth wall breaks through and it talks directly to you. And I actually really liked that because I feel like there is a tendency with period pieces to be and then racism was solved. I feel like the sepia tones of a historical movie, of a period piece, can act like that's a long ago thing. And I enjoyed that her character kept breaking the fourth wall to be nope.
I also did want to give a shout out to Justine Bateman's first film, Violet. I know you saw Violet. Violet is a very traumatizing film.
Yeah. I didn't like that one as much. Yeah, no, my problem with Violet was that I feel like she uses too many bells and whistles. So it's also, I watched that in Introducing Selma Blair around the same time, and they're dealing with a lot of the same stuff, self-doubt and inner saboteur and cognitive distortions that make you see yourself in ways that are not actually how you are. You're better than that. and like it's all Olivia Munn, and she's a successful producer, and but Justin Theroux is like the mean voice in her head that tells her she's not worth anything, and like the concept is good, but I felt like the way it's executed is it's like a crash course in therapy that doesn't actually use any words from therapy, which I found kind of reckless and messy, as if they invented these epiphanies instead of clearly cribbed them from someone's notes.
That's what it definitely felt like. Self-help, the movie, but I think I think the things that impressed me, and I completely agree. I think when you're a first-time filmmaker, you have a tendency to want to get everything in there and get really. And I think the style-wise, I was just like, we could pull it back a bit. We don't have to. We don't have to
because there's voiceover and there's writing on the screen and there's color washes and there's flashbacks, and it's like I get it. Like and there's clips to like archival footage, and I understood what she was doing, but it's like it didn't feel integrated in a way that was fluid, and so it just felt like a lot of noise, which I think was the point. I think the idea was like, these are intrusive thoughts, and I'm like, no, I get it, but like I actually am not paying attention to the performance of your lead actress because you've scribbled writing across her and you've got this going. Like I can't pay attention to the actual story because there's so much other stuff going on.
But I will say this is a career highlight for Olivia Munn. I've had my problems with her in the past, and it's not necessarily because I don't like her or I don't care for her acting style. I just don't think anybody's ever used her in a very successful way, or she's had like a meaty part to really prove what she's capable of. And please don't come at me, Psylocke fans, because I'm pretty sure she also regrets doing those X-Men movies.
Yeah, they don't give her a lot to do.
No.
Like that, realistically, there's like Psylocke as a character is super cool. Psylocke in those movies is, an interesting swimsuit.
Correct. But I really was impressed with what she was able to do, even amongst all the noise and stuff. I also had an issue with like, if you removed all the bells and whistles and stuff, like her character arc is really that she goes from kind of an okay place to kind of a better place, and that's not the world's most interesting.
There's no there's no epiphany moment.
Yeah.
And as someone who's been to therapy, like there's normally a moment where you're like, oh, and it's not like everything is exponentially easier then, but it's annoying that it feels like the epiphany moment is kind of brushed over, if it even happens. Like I was trying to be like, wait, what changed for her that everything is changing? And I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
But maybe I missed it amid all the,
no, but I also didn't see it if you did, but I'm still interested in seeing what else Justine Bateman can do. Whatever comes next, and who knows, maybe she won't do another thing. Maybe this was the passion and she got it out. The last one I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if you wanted to bring up anything else, but the last movie I wanted to bring up was Inbetween Girl, which is a young, not necessarily a rom-com. I think you could call it a rom-com, but it's a movie about a teen artist called Angie Chen, and she starts essentially having these hookups with this very popular kid in private school, but she also befriends his girlfriend. And in the midst of all of this, her parents are also going through a divorce, which is what's really driving her and really making her sort of question who she is. This is the first film by Mai Mikano. Emma Galbraith plays this character, Angie Chen, and I just thought this was a really tender, really smart, sort of an anecdote to like those glossy Netflix teenage rom-coms that you see, and honest in a way that you don't get from a lot of teen movies. And
like we were talking earlier about messiness and being a woman, and like she's a messy character. She's struggling to figure this stuff out, and she's kind of mean.
Yeah, she's kind of mean.
Understandable.
Exactly.
Like that's understandable. Like she says stuff, and I'm like, oh, like I get it, but oh man, like But I think that's honest. I think that's an honest portrayal of where a kid like she's in the position she's in would be. So I like that instead of. I think it's a good, because Netflix has like the Lara Jean Covey trilogy, and like Lara Jean's adorable and I love her, but that's like a very polished look at like teendom and romance. And
that's exactly what I kept thinking of, is I kept being like, well, this is the sort of reverse side of that, because she's not, and that's the thing, like it's not even necessarily that she's not popular, but because you never see her like getting bullied by anybody, but she's also not like a flashy dresser or anything. She very much has her own style. She's into her own stuff. She's a little bit of a loner, which I don't know if the movie necessarily like ever fully explains that. And I think that's an interesting trait because you don't see that in too many teen movies. But
Yeah.
I think Emma Galbraith's just a total star and is going to go pretty far.
If you could go to the dance with anybody in the whole world, who would you go with?
No one.
Nobody.
I don't go to dances. You
Okay,
know
well,
this.
I want you to come because I'm gonna go. So, like, who are you gonna go with?
You, I guess.
No, because I'm gonna have a date. I don't know who yet, but
If you have a date, then why do I have to go?
okay, if I put a gun at your head and I was like, you have to go to the dance with somebody or I'm gonna shoot, who would you go with?
I'd take the bullet.
Yeah, I thought I liked the arc of that, and I liked how it bucks up. Like it's clearly in conversation with a pre-existing concept of how like these teen romances are supposed to play out. And like I enjoyed that it recognized that and then said, cool, you know where these things go. We're not doing that. But it did it in a way that suited the story and didn't just feel like dun 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 over here. Like it's why is that how I did it? I don't know. But it's well established like why it makes the turn it makes, as opposed to like, you know, it's not like a bait and switch story. Like they're warning you early on, like this is not your happy sappy Netflix rom-com, which is not just talk trash on happy sappy rom-coms. I enjoyed those, but I enjoyed that this was saying I'm not doing that.
Yeah, there's a formula and it works for a reason. But, you know, it's always nice to see something that's willing to try something different. Was there anything else that you saw? I wanted to give you a chance to do one last sort of plug for anything, and then we'll wrap up.
I think we talked, you know what? I'm going to use my plug to talk about a short film that I thought was really funny that you should keep an eye out for and maybe check the app and see if it's still there. It was called Puss. It's also a COVID comedy. It is about a lady who is super horny because she's been stuck in quarantine by herself for months and months. So she tries to create a hookup and then something weird happens and it's very funny. It just delighted me. I thought it was very funny and I laughed at it and I appreciated that because again, there's so many COVID movies. And like I haven't even watched like legitimately half of them, like not just at South by. They've been coming out for months and months. There was one day I got emails about 3 different COVID movies and I was like, stop it. Yeah. But I was impressed that Puss was very funny. And I am pleased that it exists in the world. So I feel bad that I wasn't planning to talk about it, but I'm like, you know what? One last shout out to Puss. But yeah, I would say look for that one because it's very funny. And I'm curious to see what that actress and that team does next.
That's awesome. Well, Kristy, thank you so much for joining us at the Mixed Reviews, for giving us the opportunity, and by us, I literally just mean me, giving me the opportunity to have a chance to view these films and really see what's coming up. And I'm just, I don't know, I was really impressed this time around. Before we end the episode, I'm going to give you a chance to plug your stuff. Where can people find you online?
I write all over the place. For South by Southwest, I wrote for IGN, the playlist.
You mentioned RogerEbert.com.
RogerEbert.com and Pajiba. Yeah, I'm sorry. This has been I wrote a lot. So I wrote all those things. You can find my stuff on decadentcriminals.com. It's where I collect all my reviews and stuff. I have an authory page too, but I don't really know how that works yet. So I don't know how to tell anyone to look for that. I have to get that together. But I'm on Twitter. I'm at Kristy Puchko, KristyPuchko. I tweet stuff there a lot. I'm also a Rotten Tomatoes top critic. So if you search for me on Rotten Tomatoes, you can find all of my ratings of stuff there. Yeah. And I'm also on Instagram if you want to see what my haircut looks like. And I also post pictures of cocktails I make and pop culture embroideries that I've gotten super into in quarantine because they make my hands busy and my mind less so.
Well, I'll be honest, if they do follow you on Instagram, I did not oversell the haircut. It's very good. But
I'll have to post a pic now of it and be like, ta-da!
But thank you so much. Thank you for joining me for doing this South by Southwest wrap-up. Thank you, South by Southwest, for happening this year and really making it convenient for people. I'm Gavin from the Mixed Reviews. Louis will be back with me and a special guest for our next episode, which will come out next week. I know you're all looking forward to that. And I do want to thank you. As a previous guest in the Mixed Reviews, if you want to go into our back catalog, you can find Kristy's episode where we discuss the career and works of Michael Keaton.
I love him. I love him so much. He was trending today. Did you see?
I did see. I should have. I'm usually on top of those things too to like plug the episode. Be like, oh, this is trending.
I literally have people messaging me like, "Do you see Michael Keaton's trending?" I'm like, yes, I did.
You can always find the Mixed Reviews on Twitter at the Mixed Reviews. You can email us at reviewsmixed@gmail.com or on Instagram at _mixed_reviews. And you can listen to us everywhere. We're on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Audible, Google, and if you listen to us on Apple, please stop by, give us a 5-star rating and review. We'll read it on the show, and it also helps other people find our show. So thank you so much for coming back every 2 weeks, and we hope to give you more bonus episodes. Thank you, Kristy. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. This is super fun.